Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Islamic Pulse Talk Show. We are talking about the role models presented in Karbala. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Islamic Pulse Talk Show. We're here in the studio talking about some of the role models that are presented in Karbala. Of course, our condolences to you all wherever you are upon the martyrdom anniversary of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, his family members and his companions, and these months of Muharram and Safar in which we commemorate their martyrdom. In order to talk a little bit about some of these role models that we find in Karbala, we invited Sayyid Agha Raza. Sayyid Agha Raza, Assalamu alaikum, welcome to the Islamic Pulse Talk Show.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Jazakallah, thank you so much for coming to the talk show. Of course, our condolences to you, your loved ones on the martyrdom anniversary of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, his family members, his companions in these months of Muharram and Safar as we commemorate their martyrdom, their mission, their purpose, their goals. One of the interesting things that we wanted to discuss a little bit is these various role models that we find in this epic of Karbala and this epic of Ashura and Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So we invited you to just talk a little bit about that. Inshallah, we hand it over to you in the name of Allah.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Assalamu alayka ya wa abdillah wa ala al-arwah allati hallat bi finaiq. Alayka minni salamullahi abadan ma baqitu wa baqiya al-layl wa an-nahar. ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين ورحمة الله وبركاته. So first of all, condolences to you as well and to all of the believers around the world and to all of the oppressed people around the world on the occasion of this year's Muharram, in which we remember the sacrifice and the bravery and the courage and the movement and the purposes of the movement of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Now obviously the entire episode of Karbala is a kind of story, it is an epic that from an academic perspective you could literally have thousands upon thousands of PhD theses upon this subject, and that is why for over 1,000 years ulama have spoken about it, they have written about it, even Orientalists, people from other cultures have spoken about it, have written about it, and it's like a treasure trove that just does not end.
Yeah, mashallah.
And one of those aspects of why it is so infinite in nature is because it is so multidimensional. There are so many lessons, so many layers of lessons within Karbala. One of these lessons that we need to learn from Karbala are the role models within Karbala. But before we go to that, we need to discuss why role models are important. Why can't we just have theory, right? Why can't we just look at the Quran, for example, and take the theory of Tawheed, Islamic monotheism, the theory of servitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then just start acting upon it? Well, the first answer that comes to mind, because historically one of the slogans which was erroneously raised within the Muslim community was Hasbuna Kitabullah.
The book of Allah is enough for us.
Allah is enough for us, right? But even in that slogan, people misunderstood what the Kitabullah is. So if you look at the Quran, how much of the Quran is purely theoretical? So much of the Quran relies upon presenting role models of true Tawheed as well as anti-heroes, these villains, right, of the other side of the coin, of Taghut. And it is through those role models, through those Quranic stories, those historic narratives that the Quran builds, that in Quranic psychology, we learn that they are more influential and they have a greater effect upon the minds and hearts of people than pure theory. So you can talk about the philosophy of Islam, you can talk about, and all of that is important, but unless you have role models manifesting those values in real life, within real challenges, with those human limitations that the material world dictates, unless you have this, you really don't have a body of knowledge that can be emulated and followed. So that is the first point that we need to understand, that role models are the manifestation and the actualization of any theory. And it is without those role models, you are left with books, you are left with ideas and concepts that are abstract in nature, that maybe cannot be related to, that people might dismiss as being too idealistic or otherworldly, right? Not pragmatic, right? But people who have walked upon that path, successfully walked upon that path, as well as people who have rejected that path. Both of these become role models that one of them we need to follow, the other we need to take ibrat from, we need to learn from and avoid. So given these role models within Karbala, you have such a vast array of role models.
Yeah, Sayyid, if it's okay, like before we kind of go to the next chapter, right? This idea that these role models, they something very tangible for an individual. So, and it's like you very well, you put it very well, that you have a conceptual level, this abstract level, good and evil, and chivalry and nobility and honor, and then as compared to greed and rebellion and deception and cunning. So all these things at the abstract level, yes, they're nice, they're necessary because they build, the fundamental ideological, philosophical framework, but unless you have that role model that exemplifies all of these things, that shows you in very tangible manner, it's necessary to have that role model, So I think one of the beauties of the Holy Quran, of course, which you alluded to, is the idea that it presents both this role model for good, and it presents this role model for evil, and it makes it very tangible, that okay, if these were individuals who, they're presented as role models for us, then we too can walk either the path of that good individual or that bad individual, and be able to realign our lives based upon that.
Exactly. So the Quran, even when it talks about the Holy Prophet, and everyone knows this verse, right? It calls the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls the Holy Prophet Uswatun Hasana. So he says he is the best example for people to follow. And that in itself shows that the aspects of the Holy Prophet's life that we have a responsibility to follow are not those aspects that are supernatural in nature, that cannot be attained by normal human beings. No. The life of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Ahl Bayt alayhimus salam, it clearly shows that even in the worst times, during the worst of calamities, and also at times when they have power and they have affluence as well, how to act has been clearly defined. So within the minutest of things, you have examples of how. So the other way around, if we did not have that body of knowledge, you could probably turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and object and say that, how is this guy Uswatun Hasana? Because I wanted to, especially in the modern world, right?
Yeah.
So people could say that during the time of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you did not have this kind of an economic system.
Yeah.
You did not have this kind of job slavery, as you often message.
Yeah, debt slavery.
Exactly. We did not have this kind of a political, social, cultural system, and with all of its unique challenges that have been brought about by technology, especially technology in the hands of Taghut, structures created by them to enslave people, enslave their free will, their agency. So how can the Prophet of Islam and the Ahl Bayt alayhimus salam be role models? But when you start going through their seerah, when you start reading it, which is one of the things that we've mentioned so often in these talk shows and in our lectures as well, that the first responsibility of every believer, foremost, even before your nourishment and how you earn a living, is to be a student of the lives of the Holy Prophet and the Ahl Bayt alayhimus salam. So when you start going through their lives, you find all of these examples, and you yourself are amazed. How can this? And then the fuqaha help you, because sometimes there are examples that don't directly apply overtly and explicitly to the modern world, but the fuqaha, knowing the holistic and comprehensive system of Islam, take those examples and then derive from them the rulings for our modern lives.
At the head being the Waliul Faqih.
At the head being the Waliul Faqih, who's dealing not only with individual juristic issues, but with socio-political, highly complicated and complex issues which require a special kind of fiqahat, a special kind of jurisprudence, which is, as we have mentioned many times, by the testimony of the fuqaha themselves, is something far beyond your average fiqahat. But anyhow, this is the role model that we find in the Prophet of Islam sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Ahlul Bayt. Now, interestingly, is this something that Islam has come up with? Is this some sort of a new innovation that no other culture had? No, throughout history, cultures have relied on role models. One of the reasons that many scholars, they write this in their works and their discourses, one of the reasons why ancient civilizations especially would codify their knowledge in stories is because they needed to turn that knowledge and their values and their systems, be they right or wrong is outside our discussion right now, but they needed to codify their values, their systems into emulatable ideals, emulatable role models that could be implemented within society. So this is like turning theory into technology, right? Something that is plug and play, to use the terminology that we used to use in the 90s when talking about computers, right? So you always have this. You always, but the problem with other cultures, non-divine cultures, is that understanding that they need these role models and these archetypes for society, they find themselves at a critical deficit of actual role models.
Yeah, sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Because unfortunately the kings and the queens and the princes of old were not people that you could really follow. So you needed to come up with mythology, you needed to come up with stories that had some ambience of morality in them, or whatever kind of values that they were trying to dictate upon society. Even in modern times, you find that non-divine societies are faced with this deficit, and they struggle to create heroes out of thin air. So they have this entire system, especially in the modern world, they have this entire system of comic book heroes.
Yes, insanely popular.
Insanely popular comic book heroes. You have this entire industry of celebrities, and you have this entire, you can call it a blockchain of celebrities, a kind of a mill that churns out, a factory that churns out celebrities, because the older celebrities, they will become obsolete, so you need to replace them with new ones, right?
Of course,
for newer generations. And then you find, unfortunately, human beings who have been kept away from true role models, either by the taghuts and their media setup and their propaganda setup, or maybe even more by us who have failed in talking about these role models, in bringing these role models to not only we failed to bring them to humanity at large, but many of the role models that we haven't even been able to introduce them to our own children, to our own communities. Even within the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, how many of the Ahlul Bayt do we truly know, right? How much do we know even about Imam Hussein, about his childhood, about his teenagers, about how he was when Imam Hassan was the Imam? We have,
they said 10 days.
Those 10 days, right? And then when we come to the other Imams, we know almost nothing about Imam Baqir alayhi salam. I'm not talking about the scholars. I'm talking about our communities, right? Obviously the fuqaha, they are experts of this. But our mimbari scholars, people who go on pulpits, even
they
them,
do a disservice,
they do this unfortunately, and it's not something that they do by purpose, but this is something that has become a negative part of our culture, that we do not pursue actively the enterprise of introducing and showing the fadail, the merits of all of these. So when we are doing this to the Ahlul Bayt, then obviously the Shuhada, you know, they're lower down in the hierarchy, so they get completely ignored. And then people who were Sulaha, right? And
righteous people.
The righteous people, the scholars throughout the ages. Like how many of us know who Sayyid ibn Taus was, truly, right? How many of us, even in the Hawza, are the normal run-of-the-mill student would not know much about Sayyid ibn Ta'us, he
Yeah.
would not know much about Qulayni,
Yeah.
right? Whereas
Sayyid
without
Razi.
Qulayni, you would not have had religion, right?
Yeah.
You would not have
Al-Kafi
Usul
and
al-Kafi,
these
right?
things.
And Furu al-Kafi. How much do we know about, for example, our other ulama, Sheikh Saduq, etc.? So this is a great disservice that we have unknowingly, inshallah, we have unknowingly and unconsciously done. And this is in fact one of the things that our senior ulama always emphasize upon. So the other cultures, however, you find how rapidly and in a kind of in a maniacal, almost a maniacal fervor, they are totally focused upon creating these illusionary and mythical role models, right?
Yeah, I mean these whole, you talked about the comic book heroes, Marvel, DC. I mean, like you said, it's a almost insane, maniacal type of following that people have, and it's interesting to me. We were talking a little bit about this before the talk show, that how this kind of shows you that this having a role model or needing a role model or yearning for a role model is something that is in the innate nature of a human being, that they're always looking for these role models. And so I guess kind of talking about what we've talked about so far is that there is that innate nature for a human being to look for a role model, and the Almighty God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has provided those role models in the framework or the ghalib or the persona of previous messengers, of our Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa alihi, the Ahlul Bayt, the divinely appointed Imams, and so that just in case maybe if people said that no, these people are unreachable, then you have these righteous scholars, you have the ulama, you have the shuhada, these shuhada of you had brought up the 8-year sacred defense war, these shuhada, and then the defenders of the shrine shuhada, who in the very real world are these role models. And that is for the Islamic, pure Muhammadan Islam side.
Absolutely.
But on their side, because they don't have that and they have that desire, then they're creating these Supermans and Captain Americas and Batmans and all of these other superheroes.
The interesting thing is that because we know that this is an open secret now, right? Because everyone knows about this, how Zionism tries to control the entirety of the world. And especially in the civilization of Taghut, in modern Taghut,
yes,
they have this extremely deep understanding of human psychology. One of the academic fields that they have worked on thoroughly is human psychology, and they apply it everywhere, they exploit it everywhere, from marketing, from creating
finding ways to put humanity into servitude,
absolutely,
to enslave humanity.
Not only in the corporate sector, but also in the arena of politics, in the arena they subvert their own systems of governance. They have this. So they have this entire circle. Now they understand, these people who are behind the scenes, they understand, and they use their academia to create. In fact, there was this famous research by one of the American universities, I forget which one, but it was one of the great think tanks. I think it was Terror Free Tomorrow. I'm not sure, but it was one of the famous think tanks quite a while back, 10 or 15 years back. And they talked about archetypes. They did a research about Shia archetypes, and they had said that because the Islamic Revolution talks about and focuses about Imam Hussain alayhi salam, the way to destroy the Islamic Revolution is to create, is to understand Imam Hussain alayhi salam, and then try to create an artificial role model in terms of maybe another scholar somewhere, and present him as the true Hussein, and the leadership of the revolution as Ma'azallah the Yazid. And they actually wrote this down. And this was around like 10 or 15 years ago, and I remember I circulated the research amongst our brothers here in Qom so that they could understand how the think tanks were working. So at the same time, for their own societies, they understand that this is a natural thirst within the population. And if you leave that thirst neutrally, if you leave it alone, freely, it will gravitate towards
the
true
pure
role models, right?
Yeah.
But so they need, for both reasons, they need to stop them from going towards true role models. Like, for example, Malcolm X did. He gravitated towards the true role model.
Yeah.
They need to stop that. They can't have a nation of Malcolm X's.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
They can't afford that. And at the same time, they need to nourish this thirst. And this process itself is such a great process. It is such an effective and efficient process to get people to mold themselves through their own hands in values that you dictate. So, for example, just a little glimpse into how they do this.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
When you look at all of these role models presented, all of these heroes and heroines presented by all these comic books, you normally see that they are dressed in a particular manner. And since we've been talking about women's issues as well before Muharram, you see that all of the female heroes are dressed in a particular manner, right? Now, one of the values of Zionist constructed culture is that flaunting your sexual beauty is seen as a value, not as a disservice to society and yourself, right? And they want to push this in. So one of those tools that they use, there is a vast array of tools that are used for the sexualization of society.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
For making it natural, for making shamelessness to become natural. They use a vast array. But one of those cogs in there is to create these heroes, be it in comic books, be it in cinema, be it in the lives of actual actors and actresses and singers and celebrities who dress in that manner. And as I said, this is just like a very minute example.
Yeah.
We can go into other things which are more profound as well.
Even though this itself is very profound and it's very scary, you know. When we were kids, at least growing up in the U.S., comic books is something that is common. Nobody looks down upon this comic book culture or these superhero cultures. It's very normal. All the kids in school, they have comic books. They have the little cards, right? Comic
they learn
cards.
how to form social interactions and social relationships first and foremost through Archie's, right? Archie comics and things of that sort, right? So Archie comics, I remember because we grew up in a English-centered kind of an environment as well. So even in those early, like in primary school, we had access to these comics, and all of the other guys, we were like a religious family, so we had a limited amount of access, or maybe a kind of censored amount of access. And this was in Pakistan, right? This isn't in like the US where everything is free and you can get whatever you want. The other kids, unfortunately, they had open access to all of these. And if you look at it now, if you look at these Archie comic books, these are handbooks. These are like do-it-yourself guides of how to act in society, right?
Moral, ethical.
And even now, if you look at many of these TV series or the movies that come out of Hollywood, you have the same archetypes. So you have the central figure who is the Archie, then you have the wingman or the best friend, and he needs to act in a certain manner. Then you have the love interest who needs to act in. Then you have this other person who wants to be the love interest. So you have this love triangle, etc., etc., etc. It goes on. You have a villain, and then you have a rich guy, and then you have a poor guy, and they define all of these things that naturally come about in society, right?
Yeah, it's really mind-boggling.
Yeah, exactly. And then back in the day, when they weren't as politically correct as they want to be now, and then now they're falling into another trap. They used to show African Americans in a very negative light as well.
Yeah,
right?
sure, yeah.
Right? So all of this was there.
Yeah.
And now it is there in another form. So now you have, for example, you have woke values that are being pushed down the throat of society. And they've been doing this so militantly that even society that has been raised up and has been trained within to see all of these deviances as being normal, even they are reacting to this extremity. But that is for another talk show, inshallah, some other day.
Sayyid, I just wanted to add there, because before, I think maybe we're going to transition towards the role models presented in Karbala, but a very stark warning to all of the parents out there, to all of the older brothers and sisters, to all of the youth out there, is to be very, very careful with what you're consuming, you know, whether it is media, whether it is television, whether it is movies, whether it is video games, whether it is entertainment, whether it is written things like comic books or comic book cards. I mean, just be very, very careful. You know, you would not pick up, and I'm sorry to give such a graphic type of an example, but you know, I think the more graphic you make the example, the better. I mean, if you saw, you know, feces on the road, if you saw crap on the road, you wouldn't go pick it up and start eating it.
Absolutely.
Right? And this is the consumption of things which completely alter your soul, your psyche, your mind.
Absolutely.
And then eventually these things that you're consuming, you know, we realized when we were, you know, 30, 35 years old that, man, these comic books that we were watching and looking at, these comic cards that we were looking at, these were things that were destroying our spirituality without us even knowing it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So this stark warning to be very careful. You know, you don't consume anything, you don't eat anything, you don't drink anything. You know, if there was water that in a glass that was brown, nobody's going to go and drink that. These things have the same, if not worse, impact on an individual soul. You know, and like you say on the talk shows, that then one day we say, what's wrong with our kids? Why do our kids not listen to us? Why are these kids not listening to Maulana? Sometimes, why is Maulana saying these things? You know, why is a lot of this goes back to what is being consumed, and I just wanted to put that in there before we continue.
In fact, if you look at it from, because this seeps down into your soul, I think if we want to like give everyone in the audience a single sentence as a formula, right? Just remember, every cultural product has a baggage of values attached to it that it is trying to sell to you. Right? And the beauty of cultural products is because they are not overt, they're not theoretical, they don't declare themselves as so, they show themselves as stories, as fiction maybe, or as entertainment. Your guard is lowered, and the values, they hit into your soul very quickly. If someone comes up to you and say, okay, I want to preach to you about atheism, or the other side of the argument, you have this going on obviously for this is part of American and British culture. You have your doorbell rings, you open the door, and they're Jehovah's Witnesses or some other group.
Jehovah's Witnesses.
Why isn't it very popular? Because it's overt, right? They just come, we like to talk to you about Jesus Christ, right? And you say, no, I don't want to talk to you
about Jesus Christ.
But if they were to like kind of repackage that same message into a very subliminal kind of a delivery.
They gave you a bunch of flowers and on the card said, this is from Jesus, he loves you.
That it would affect more.
You would start thinking twice about, wait a minute, what's going on?
Absolutely. If you were to take the same, if you go back to Zionism, right? I remember when we were kids, there was this popular television show and everyone loved it because back in that day, these attack helicopters were very popular because kids, especially boys, they like military wear, right? So there was this show called Airwolf.
Airwolf, it was the super hyped up helicopter.
And there was a lot of politics behind it as well, because they were
I don't remember the politics, to be honest with you.
They were trying to
I really like that show.
They were trying to promote certain military wear.
I didn't know that. I used to like Knight Rider, Airwolf, A-Team.
Exactly, right. So in all of these shows, if you revisit them now, because some of our teachers, they actually have the institutions of media research. If you revisit them now, you find that they have episodes in which they sell you the idea of Zionism. So Zionists, Israeli commandos are allies. They're part of that myth of being the only democracy in the Middle East, right? The bastion of civilization back in that day, right? So
starving thousands of men, women, and children in the present day.
So it is only through the mujahidat, the sacrifices of the mujahideen, the sacrifices of the martyrs, that now that mask has been ripped off. But they have worked so hard to kind of inculcate that into your minds. And one of the reasons why so many Americans, so many people in the West
Yeah.
still believe, their knee-jerk reaction is that Israel
Yeah,
is
yeah.
they're good people.
Yeah, they
It's
can't,
because they've been conditioned in this
Yeah.
manner subliminally and unconsciously through these entertainment devices, right?
Role models.
Yeah, role models. So this is always there. Imam Khamenei, when he talks about books, and what an extremely comprehensive personality this man is, really. He is a gift and a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In one of his books, which is a compilation of his sermons and his lectures about book reading and how books should be designed, he explicitly says this. He says that if a message is given to an audience in a indirect manner, through a story, and he praises, for example, the novel Les Miserables, which is, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, the famous French novel, right? He praises that. He says that it is providing you so many of these values in an indirect manner, and they hit the spot, right? And you can see all professors of literature around the world will testify that Imam Khamenei is correct in this, in his assessment here, right? So, coming back, role models are extremely important, and they are an extremely potent and powerful tool for civilization making. Because at the core of civilization is a lifestyle, and at the core of that lifestyle is a package and a body of values, negatives and positives, that are being integrated and institutionalized into the hearts of people. Before we move on, since we've already started this discussion, right? I talked about female heroines and heroes in comic books. On the other side, how are male heroes dressed in comic books, right?
Yes.
So if they're macho, if they're really heroic, they have
like
tight clothing, right?
Yes, a leotard. Leotard is what they wear in the ballet.
Exactly.
With the underwear.
Yeah.
That's it.
And we could never understand why Superman has his underwear on the outside, but that is another
or Batman,
topic. Or yeah, why on the outside?
All of the superheroes.
Yeah. So, but the thing that I wanted to kind of touch on here was that they always have these tight clothes so that you can see their muscles and everything. Visit any book in Islam about the ethics of clothing and the seerah of the Ahl Bayt alayhimus salam, and it's always loose clothing. It's always loose clothing. Why? In women, it is a matter of decency and about a matter of modesty. And normally, unfortunately, because we try to reinterpret Islam in a tribalistic manner as well, we always limit the idea of modesty to women. But no one talks about modesty in men. Right? But Islam, true Muhammadan Islam, it talks about modesty in men. So you're not supposed to be like flaunting around your muscles and like, what are you doing?
And what's really amazing is that like if you go past into the thousands of years, you will always find that the upper class, those that had wealth, those
were natural values in society.
You know, they had honor and they had nobility. They always wore loose clothing. And all across the world, right?
More
this is
clothing
amazing.
And loose clothing. In fact, this is one of the things because
like
humanity,
China, Japan, the old ancient Indian civilizations, Buddhism, you know, you will find that the more civilized and that the more, go ahead.
And the more affluent you were, the higher you were in the hierarchy. But as you know, and we've said this many times as well, La taral jahila illa mufritan aw mufarrita. Humanity is always like a pendulum between extremes. Islam came and it gave you the middle and balanced path. So Islam told you that too much clothing, just to show that you are the upper class, that's not allowed, is it? Right? And too little clothing, that's not allowed. So the balance was decent, modest clothing, in which you're not trying to show anyone how powerful you are. It is your character that shows how powerful you are. Inshallah, if we get the time someday, we'll talk about something called Halful Fuzul, which was a group of heroes that came about before the time of the Prophet, and the father of the Prophet was part of that group. That is how you show that you are a hero, right? And then obviously the lives of Imam Ali alayhi salam, the Ahl Bayt alayhi salam, the Prophet himself was the greatest of heroes. Imam Ali says that in the heat of battle we would hide behind the Prophet when we would get tired. Yeah, we would seek refuge in him. Seek refuge in him. And his courage and his bravery. And his, so this was just like touching a small corner of how they create this. And that then trickles down into society. And if you want to look like a hero, if you want to look impressive, you need to have tight clothes, right? So this is just like a small portion of how those values are.
Yeah.
And those values are against the values of Islam. And Islam, as we have said many times over, isn't just a cult, a community religion. Islam is the software of existence.
Yeah.
So the values of Islam are the values that should be adopted by all human beings in order to reach holistic success.
You know, Sayyid, before we continue to the the role models of Karbala, we keep on stumbling upon things that, and they're necessary in these months of Muharram and Safar, you know, as we commemorate the martyrdom and the mission of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. You know, these are the things that need to be put out. These are all Husseini messages.
Absolutely.
These are all part of the mission of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. A lot of times people don't understand, you know, how vast this movement is, how many things it covers, and how many things it can solve and fix in humanity. I mean, these role models and these, not just comic book heroes, celebrities, because, you know, another thing that you had brought up was the fact that because the comic book hero is so supernatural that he can't be relatable on the one-on-one on the ground, so then they create celebrities. So, well, yes, you can be relatable to the celebrity, but this whole culture of role models, right, of these ideals that you want to become physically and you know, at least physically, how much damage it does to the psyche and the spirit of both boys and girls that are growing up, you know. Then when it comes to just on the physical level, you know, what their body is like, you know, how much weight they have, what their skin color is, what their eye color is, their hair color, the size of their nose, ears, eyebrows, lips, you know, and it is such a poisonous and cancerous thing that the world is witnessing, you know. And you know, alhamdulillah, when it comes to I have daughters, you have daughters, you know, and we tell them, we said, listen, God has created you perfect.
Absolutely.
Who is it that is telling you that God has created you imperfect?
Absolutely.
It has to be an evildoer. It's interesting. Malcolm X, Sayyid Malcolm X, is the second time we brought him up. Allah bless him, elevate his rank and his status. The Shaheed used to say this. He says that he used to say that who is it that's telling you your nose is too big to the black people, that your skin is too black, that your hair is too curly? Who is this? This is definitely the enemy that is telling you. And I just wanted to add that in there.
Absolutely.
How much damage that is doing. You know, when
it is an entire society built upon toxicity, and they realize it themselves. Remember when we talked about feminism, we said that there are glimmers and there are like these lights of truth within what they're saying as well. And this is true for all philosophies that you have within society, because many of those academics, they realize that there is something wrong. It is only when they come to prescriptions on how to fix these things is that they fall into another extremity. But if you look at their society, their own academics are saying this. Their own researchers are saying that we are a society built upon toxicity. You had masculine toxicity, now you have feminine toxicity as well. There is this extremely interesting documentary that people should watch. It's named, I think it's called Consuming Kids. And it shows you how kids are bombarded with these messages in which at the end of the day they are fooled and hoodwinked into consuming things that they do not need.
Yeah, we did a reaction time with Sheikh Ali Himani back in the day on this.
Excellent. And there was another research back in the day that I read. It said that the parameters and the definition of beauty being created by Hollywood and by all its affiliated media industry is something that is less than a fraction of the 1% in actual population. So the researchers, they said that the entire enterprise of the cosmetics industry, of the entertainment industry, is to convince you that you are inadequate, that you are ugly. You're ugly in your behavior, you're ugly in your physical appearance, you're ugly, you're unsuccessful. That is the narrative, and this is so strange. You see, every culture, especially the culture that is dominant in the world right now, that has hegemony, which is the Zionist controlled culture, it is always bombarding you with this idea. It is such a narcissistic culture that it has this abusive relationship with anyone that goes into that culture and becomes a citizen, right?
Yeah.
They're always trying to convince you that you are wrong, you are inadequate, you are insufficient, you are ugly, you are unsuccessful. And then they have this entirely other industry which tries to sell you prescriptions of how to become beautiful, successful, socially amicable,
Yeah.
right? How to win over people and become friends with them. Billions of copies sold.
Yeah.
New York Times bestseller,
Yeah.
right? Why? Because you created that demand. You actively created that demand, right? And convincing kids to, and you see this right now, right? If the people especially, because we can see what society is right now. You don't need to live in a place to know how that society is working right now. So if you go on social media, you see these kids, you see the stuff that they're doing. One of the things that social media has done in our times is that it has kind of democratized the entire idea of being in the public eye. So you can actually tell what normal people are thinking, what normal people are doing. So if you look at what our kids are doing, not only our kids, when I say our kids, I'm talking about human kids.
Yeah, yeah,
right?
humanities kids.
We've
They're our
already
kids.
said this many times over. We're not a community cult. Many of our brothers and sisters, unfortunately, even many of the people from the pulpits and mosques around the world, they present us like a community cult. We're not that. Islam is for humanity. So our kids are every human kid around the world.
Yeah.
And when you look at how they're behaving, how they're talking, how they are, what they are gravitating towards, what they are emulating, and you just feel terrible for them, right?
Yeah.
And you find that they are victims of abuse, systematic, integrated abuse, civilization-wide abuse.
Yeah.
But alhamdulillah, on the other side, you find that whenever something reaches that extreme of toxicity and poisonousness, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates an awakening, right? So the same people, you remember this activist, activist from Europe, Greta Thunberg, right? Back in the day, the entirety of media just loved her, right? The liberal media, they loved her.
Yeah, because she was like a Greenpeace, environmentalist.
They were giving her space everywhere. They were allowing her to be in all of the corridors of power, and she was the poster girl of what a good activist should be like, right?
Then she stumbled upon Palestine.
She stumbled upon Palestine, and her eyes opened up, and now she is persona non grata.
And she was on the Freedom Flotilla.
The Freedom Flotilla, yeah. And this is the truth of that society, that hypocritical society.
Yeah.
We've never had hypocrisy as an institutionalized, systematic part of the fabric of society as we have it today. Hypocrisy was always a vice within society, so it was always a footnote. Right? It was never part of the fabric of the civilization that you have today in the West.
So I think because we spent quite a bit of time on the whole fundamentals and foundations of role models, even though it was incredibly important and necessary, I think that perhaps the blessings and the barakah of the role models that we're going to talk about, they helped us to open up this very vast and comprehensive and very serious issue that the world is facing, that many people might not realize this is one of the issues that we are facing. And this is one of the things that, of course, eventually with the reappearance of Imam al-Mahdi, may Allah hasten his reappearance, these are things that are going to be fixed, and they have to be fixed. Of course, these are preparatory steps towards that. But so here, Sayyid, before we continue, I think one thing that we should talk about to kind of wrap up this whole role model thing that we talked about was the issue of whether or not we have role models in the present day. And then, because of lack of time, I do want you to talk about at least one role model in this event of Karbala. But hopefully, we want to, or I'm going to request you to bring in a role model that is not, talked about as often as the other very I don't want to use the word cliche, the very traditional role models that we talk about.
Often repeated.
Role models, perhaps somebody that we don't know so well, inshallah.
Inshallah. So one of the things that I wanted to mention before we go on to those, that one individual that we want to talk about today, is that just as I said, the civilization of the Taghut, because it understands that it needs these role models in society to keep perpetuating its own values and keep its society in check.
Yeah.
They keep churning out these role models, generation after generation after generation. Now, you do not have that kind of a perverse micromanagement of people's psychologies in an organic society. You're not supposed to have that. You're not supposed to have that. In fact, that in itself is a hallmark of Big Brother controlling you, right? But in Islam, what happens is, because Islam is part of the fabric of nature, right? If you have a divine philosophy, it will keep inspiring role models in every generation. So if you look at the history of Islam, you have this unbroken chain of the greatest role models in human history, right up to this day.
Yeah.
So if we link the whole idea of Karbala, the whole idea of Ashura, and how the Ahl Bayt alayhimus salam kept alive this idea, and then it became part of the culture, the academic and the communal culture of the Shia throughout these thousands of years, right? Throughout the millennia. And then it comes to this this extremely important focal point in history, which is the Islamic Revolution. And you have Imam Khomeini. What an extremely unique role model, right? You have people in the West, people who do not believe in his spirituality, etc. You have them writing. He is still in the headline news, right? That is the effect that he created.
Yeah.
He revived spirituality, whether you want it or not, whether you like to testify it or not.
Yeah.
He was like the north wind. Like when the north wind blows, right? Even people who are millions of miles away from its source, they still benefit from it. The awakening that you see now in the West and the East, from Japan, from Korea. South Korea is one of those countries that has been micromanaged by the CIA, right? It is actually like the entire government setup, the structure, the society is everything designed by the United States, Japan as well, right? Because of the entire history of World War II, etc., and the Cold War. But in South Korea, in Japan, you find these people waking up and saying no to Zionism, death to Israel, right? And now it's become a global chant, death to Israel, right? People like Piers Morgan, like how, I mean, I'm not going to judge whether he's doing it out of hypocrisy or not, or whatever, the debate is ongoing, right? But in the words of George Galloway, he just changed his stance by a millimeter, and all of the trolls of Zionism are now pouncing down upon him. This is the effect of Khomeini, Rizwanullah Ta'ala, right?
So this present-day role models.
This present-day role model. And then the inspiration of the Inqilab, because you cannot understand the revolution, the Islamic revolution and the Islamic resistance without understanding Islam, without understanding the Quran, without understanding Karbala, without understanding Imam Hussein. They are so integrally intertwined. Now you find people like Sayyid Sinwar, Sayyid Muhammad Zaif, Sayyid Hania, all of the commanders of Hamas and Islamic Jihad who have fallen down. If you find that, and I'm not just ascribing these ideas to them, search what Shaheed Sinwar said about Karbala. In one of his famous speeches, he said that if it comes down to, if push comes to shove,
turning into another Karbala,
this will become another Karbala. He was emulating Imam Hussein, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed him with not many martyrs in history have had a televised martyrdom, right? And not an inch of fear in him. Where is that inspiration coming from? It's coming from the role models of true Muhammadan Islam. Haj Qasim Soleimani, Haj Muhandis, Shaheed Hussein Badruddin, the older brother of the current leader in Yemen. And obviously Shaheed Hassan Nasrullah, Shaheed Safiuddin, Hashim Safiuddin, Shaheed Mughniya, etc., etc., etc. There's so many of them that if you start listing them, and then in the immortal words of Haj Qasim Soleimani, and this is like the best advice I've ever heard, even from the greatest of the mystic sages of our time, right? He says, if you're looking for an ustad akhlaq, for a mystic sage, a mystic, a spiritual teacher to lead you on your spiritual journey, then you can find no better teachers than the martyrs, than the shuhada. Just start reading about them, researching about them. They are the active role models. When you start emulating them, you start getting those effects as well in your life. And this is the miracle of Islam. There's no institution sitting there thinking, okay, we need to create another character. Okay, Tom Cruise is becoming too old now. We need a new Tom Cruise for the next generation. No one's doing this. We don't even have think tanks of that sort. Sometimes our laziness is to our own benefit, right? We have very few think tanks. The civilization of the Taghut, they have think tanks on every street. Right?
And they're still losing.
And they're still losing because Islam has the momentum of nature itself. Right? It finds its way. It finds its way into the hearts and minds of people. Right? So this is the great, and this is a testimony to the truth of Islam, to the truth of true Muhammadan Islam. Not the Islam of ISIS created by Mossad and CIA, not the Islam of neutrality created again by MI6 and CIA, not the fake Sunni Islam created by CIA, not the fake Shia Islam created by the MI6, but the true Muhammadan Islam, the path of balance, right? No, it doesn't matter. The other day, because this is a conversation is going to. The other day, I was reading a statement by one of the leaders of Al-Qaeda, right? One of the current leaders of Al-Qaeda. And now everyone knows Hillary Clinton testified to it, right? That this is a creation of the CIA, Al-Qaeda. So any buffoon out there who still thinks that no, Al-Qaeda is a true Islamic movement is truly a buffoon. Like they need to get their minds checked. This guy, he had a statement, and the only thing and the statement wasn't really interesting. The only thing was that he was using the same vocabulary as we do in our revolutionary narratives, right? He was saying Taghut, he was using words from the Quran. Brothers and sisters need to understand, one of the tools used by the Taghut in order to confuse you about the true Islamic narrative is to create a fake version of it. So they'll be using the same words, but you need to look at their actions. Remember what the Ma'soom alayhi salam said? He said that don't judge people by how much they pray and how much they fast and if they go to the Hajj or not, because even the hypocrite can do that. Judge people by their truthfulness and by the fact that are they honest when they take things from someone else, or they have someone else's property, someone else's belongings, someone else's rights in their hands. Do they return these rights to the rightful owner? If you look at the tafsir, the exegesis of this hadith that our ulama does, there is a huge body of socio-political ideas in that hadith. Right?
So Sayyid, I think we ran out of time. We're not going to be able to talk about the one shaheed. If you just at least tell us, his name. And so then on the next episode, we'll go ahead and talk about it.
In fact, I wanted to, because the idea was that even though I said that even our luminary shuhada, people like Abbas ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhimus salam, he's talked about so much. He's talked about every year, but we still don't know enough about him. How many people know that Abbas ibn Ali alayhi salam, when Hazrat Zainab was supposed to climb onto the camel in Medina, he got down on his hands and feet. He became a stool for Hazrat Zainab to climb on. This great champion, right? We know so little about these beautiful episodes from their life. Right? We know so little. But when we come to the outer circle, to the Ghair Ma'soom, and to the people who were not part of the Ahl Bayt, were followers of the Ahl Bayt, then we have so many heroes that are truly unsung heroes. We have done such great disservice to them. If we spend the entire year, because there are so many, you'll have to talk about hundreds every day, in order to get through the list in 365 days.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So one of these people, and interestingly, he wasn't martyred in Karbala. But if you remember the narration from Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, when someone comes up to him and he says that we wanted to be in that battle with you, he said that if your hearts were truly with us sincerely, then you were amongst us, fighting amongst us. This man is named Yazid ibn Mas'ud al-Nahshali, and he is one of the dignitaries in Basra. And inshallah we'll talk about what he did in that little episode of his life right before Karbala, and how he tried to, because this is an important aspect itself. The role model being here is, if you are a person of dignity, of honor within society, of influence within society, right? Back in that day, influence meant that you were rich, or you were powerful, or you were a scholar. Right?
Yeah.
Now you have different types of influence. So even a common person can be influential, because they have followers on social media, for example. Right? So we need to learn about these people, how they acted in society, and compare them to the villains, not only from the enemies of the Ahl al-Bayt, but from people who profess to be Shia as well in that day.
Yeah.
So inshallah we'll talk
So
about
inshallah
this
that's a good cliffhanger, yeah. But I mean, a very good discussion revolving around the role models of Karbala, the role models presented by Karbala, the role models presented by the pure Muhammadan Islam, and on the other side, the role models that have been presented by the arrogant powers and the Taghut and the Zionist international cabal, and how radically different these two are from one another. And even though we talked in a very limited 1 or 2 sentence manner of these role models in Karbala, but just that 1 or 2 statements was so powerful that if it is propagated properly among the people, it will wash away and sweep away all of this poison and toxicity that is being spread by Western commercial culture, inshallah.
Exactly.
Again, our condolences to you, Sayyid Agha Raza, and your loved ones on the martyrdom anniversary of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, his family members, his companions, and these months of Muharram and Safar. Inshallah, we will definitely continue the talk show with some specific role models, one by one, of the event of Karbala. Thank you so much, dear viewers, for joining us on the Islamic Pulse talk show. We were talking about the role models of Karbala. And of course, our condolences to you all, wherever you are, upon the martyrdom anniversary of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, his family members, his companions, and these months of Muharram and Safar. Please remember us in your prayers. That's all from us for now. Fi amanullah, and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.